Hello, everyone. Today's session is all about connecting the day-to-day liaison work to measurable bottom line impact. The goal is to show how data and dashboards transform the role from relationship manager to revenue driver. We all know that the physician liaison role has really evolved and continues to evolve. It's no longer just about maintaining relationships, it's about aligning your work with strategic growth. Leadership wants to know not just who you've met with, but what impact those meetings have had on referrals, market share, and service line growth. We continually hear at conferences and just conversations through the sales process and with our customers the challenges that liaison teams face in showcasing the ROI on all of the really great work that we know they're doing.
Great point, Haley. We all want to be able to get credit for the work that we do. So today, we have a couple things that we hope you'll take away from this session. First, I'm Dan Carr. Nice to meet you. I have a background in healthcare, as does Haley. We both originally hail from the Geisinger Health System, where we cut our teeth learning a lot about service line marketing, service line outreach, everything from oncology to orthopedics to general surgery. So a lot of what we're talking about today comes from that perspective and from our time working in healthcare. Haley, did you
Yeah.
want to say anything else to that effect about yourself and give a quick introduction?
No, I think you covered it. Other than, I spent quite a few years on a liaison team. So I think this topic is really near and dear to the Doctivity team's heart because we know that as a liaison, you're out there, you're boots on the ground, you're doing the work, you're taking in all of this really great market intelligence, and it's just all about bringing it to the forefront. So what we hope you can take away today are some key strategies and ideas on how you and or your liaison team can show a few quick wins in showing that return on investment to your work and just some longer strategies you can put in place to help measure.
Absolutely. We've been doing this long enough that I think physician liaison wasn't even a term most people were familiar with about 20 years ago, and now it's got its own conferences and it's a whole industry of people just trying to figure out how to make this every health system more efficient through this role of physician liaison that has become quite critical to every healthcare system.
And that's a really nice transition, Dan. I don't even think we planned that, but really that liaison's evolving role. As we mentioned, it's shifted dramatically. It's no longer just about building the relationships or dropping off materials. Your leadership expects liaisons to directly contribute to the strategic growth of the organization. So now liaisons are really seen as a bridge between the market, the care team, the executive strategy, really being that quarterback, a key player in driving service line success. But at the same time, for better or worse, the demands have only increased, and most teams are being asked to do more with fewer people and less time. This is the number one thing we hear across liaison teams is how can they do more with less? And all of that must remain aligned to shifting leadership priorities, growth targets, leakage reduction, specialty initiatives, you name it. We know liaisons have a lot on their plate. So, to keep that support and investment, liaisons must connect the dots between their field activity and that measurable business outcome, which means speaking the language leaders do every day around ROI. Where do we capture revenue? Where are we getting the outcomes? How does that behavior change? And ultimately, what's the market impact? So, when liaisons demonstrate strategic value with clear data, you elevate the influence inside the organization. And so, really, at the end of the day, liaisons need tools and insights that make their performance visible, help them prioritize the right relationships. And that's really where we're headed with the rest of this conversation.
Absolutely. It's about justifying and hopefully with the new tools we're going to talk about in this today is just quantifying your value to the organization so that it's not a question of what you bring, it's right there and black and white for people to read and for you to put into a report and send right out. So it's really about shifting your mindset from using PRMs, physician relation management tools, from just checking a box to actually using it more tactically to use that information to drive ROI across your organization. And again, return on your investment is that quantifying, right? It's going to be what shows the organization your value, the worth. In times of economic uncertainty, I was told that there's only two types of employees, those that make money and those that save money. And I think it's fair to say we're probably in a time like that right now.
And, Dan, to your point, this is something we help our customers with often, all the time. So, regardless of what tool you're using, whether it's a CRM, a PRM, you need it to work hard for you. It needs to connect the dots, it needs to create the graphs, it needs to tie the work effort to that impact. And what we're going to walk through here in just a minute is, how a few of our customers do that. And again, hopefully give you some ideas of how you can show that impact for yourself and for your teams.
Old adage, bears in the woods. So if a physician liaison's in the woods and he's, meeting with a doctor, but he doesn't have any effective way to record it or document or show it, did it really even happen? And jokes aside, it's so important now, as I was saying, in times of economic uncertainty. I feel like every time we turn on the news, particularly if you're following healthcare news, there's a large healthcare system, an academic health system that's laying off 1%, 5% of their workforce. And it's really important that you have a way of documenting your value to a healthcare system. So you have to be able to show referral volume tied to your liaison outreach. You need to be able to show market share movement within priority service lines that you are responsible for, provider engagement trends that correlate with downstream growth. Essentially, you need to quantify your value to the organization. And if you can pull that data yourself, with tools, with things like AI. Oh, there's that buzzword, right? We knew we were going to tie AI in here somehow. So artificial intelligence or AI, particularly these new conversational tools, I think are going to be the game changers. Haley mentioned doing more with less and the evolution of your role. I think AI is going to be an integral part in that evolution and allowing you to do more with less. There's not enough hours in the day the old way, but if you have something like artificial intelligence that can, as you're going from one in-person doctor meeting to your next in-person doctor meeting, and you can hands-free with conversational AI, document your entire previous meeting, tag all the tags you need to it, and then you have a tool that you can come back to that also within that same PRM tool can give you the data analytics to kind of back up your conversations. You become almost a team unto yourself with these tools. And I think that's kind of what we're moving towards here in the evolution that we are talking about. And again, so important that you have the ability to put out reports and document all of this. Then when asked, or it's, those crucial yearly meetings or however often you have to meet with your leadership to be able to just lay it out and show exactly how you've moved the needle for the organization and show your value. Anything
Yeah,
you want to add,
no,
Haley?
no, I think you covered it all. I think that that's a really nice transition here to talk about some of the ways our customers are showing the return on the liaison work, and really tying dollars to their field activity.
Absolutely.
The,
These use cases that Haley's going to go over, I think will just kind of be a formula for you to see how it can apply. It's really good stuff. Go ahead, Haley.
Yeah, no, Dan, that's such a great point, and I wasn't planning on saying this necessarily, but sometimes you have to think outside the box a little bit in terms of the ROI. You have to work with the data that you have, whether it's external, it's your internal data, but it doesn't necessarily have to say, I went and saw this provider X date, then they sent, 3 or 4 patients, and this is the dollar figure. Yes, that's really great. That's a really easy way to show that return, but there's so much more you can be doing when you're talking about ROI, and really showing the value of the work that you're doing. And I think a great place to start, this is based off of, one of our actual customers. When we started working with them, they were manually activity tracking and reporting through an Excel file. It was effective. There was nothing wrong with it, but it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time to enter that information into the Excel file. And it took even more time for that liaison manager to put it into graphs and to put the story and to show the return on the great work that his team was doing. And at the time, they were also really focused on visit quantity over the quality. So, there was this mindset that the more visits, the better. Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but by using Doctivity or any type of data source you have, you can then target a little bit better. So, what providers can you target maybe for orthopedics or cardiovascular based on the types of patients they're seeing or their current referral patterns? Excuse me. And, having that all into one place was so, so important for this particular team. And within
Absolutely.
six Oh, sorry, Dan,
And
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, Haley, we all know what procedures and what things move the needle, for revenue in the organization. So to her point, the quantity is not as important as the quality. It's really targeting what generates revenue for your organization. So,
Yeah. And Dan, thanks for jumping in there. It gave me a second to get my voice back. But within 6 months of using a PRM, this particular customer, over 4 liaisons, had more than 1,200 documented activities. So again, I know I just talked about quantity over quality, but these were quality entries. So it accounted for over 800 service line promotions that this liaison team was then able to go back to their leadership, their service line leadership, and report on. And they also identified more than 100 referring provider issues. So this is something we've seen across all of our liaison teams, is that ability to surface whether it's access issues, communication issues, um, whatever it is within the market so that some change can be affected. And while that liaison or liaison team might not be the ones responsible for affecting the change, they are a key part in bringing it to the table so something can happen about it. And the screenshot here on the screen is just, one of our dashboards that Doctivity offers. So we really believe in trending, looking at those trends over time. So again, so that our liaison teams do not have to be the ones to go in here and manually put different graphs together. We really come to the table with some built-in analytics and visuals.
yeah. And to Haley's point previously about being creative around ROI, when you're identifying issues, sometimes as they're happening before they become an issue, but in the past, like an access issue has cost you over a 6 month period, X amount of dollars, right?
Mhm.
But you've been able to see it coming and you were able to cut it off this time by being a good physician liaison. There's still no reason not to go and possibly use the previous data you already compiled before to show that if this hadn't been resolved, using good tactics and good intervention, that it could have cost the system X number of dollars. Again, different ways to present ROI that are sometimes creative and a little out of the box, as Haley said.
No, that's such a great point, Dan. Thanks for tying that all together. So we have three more use case examples that I'll speak to as we go through, but these are some really clear, great examples of liaison team activity and how you can really showcase that return on investment that you're bringing to the organization. So in this particular example, there was a health system, multi-hospital health system, and specifically the orthopedic service line was concerned about the productivity of 3 surgeons that they put in a priority market. These specific surgeons had been in this market for about 12 to 18 months, and they were not ramping up. They just weren't doing the OR volume they were budgeted for. They weren't seeing a high volume of patients. So the liaisons in this market use data to set the baseline of what referrals were coming into the providers. Were they coming from the employed primary care or the employed referral sources in that market? Were they coming from external providers? And they mapped it all out. From that data, they created some outreach strategies. They took the physicians, the surgeons out on the road to meet with referral sources to really create those relationships. And the great thing is all this activity was documented within the PRM. So this was a very easy use case to say, okay, here's the benchmark of what was happening for the 12 to 18 months prior to these initiatives. The liaisons identified some issues. They put a plan, a strategic plan into action. They took that action, documented the action, and then within 6 months, working with the financial department within the organization, more than $2 million in downstream revenue was created from these initiatives, from the patients having surgery and some of those ancillary services. And those providers increased their productivity and they were able to retain them in this priority market.
So impressive that you can't fly blind. Okay, so if you have a problem, but you can guess as to what it is, you can't really take action unless you know what it is, and that's why the physician liaison is such an important role. They can assume it's an access issue, they can assume whatever they want, but until you go out there and you talk to the physicians, you talk to the referring sources, you don't really know, and so that's why it's just so important what you guys do every day.
Yeah. And I'm also assuming there's probably some people on the webinar who are thinking that all sounds really great in theory, but as a liaison, we don't have the time to sit down, crunch the numbers, weed through an Excel file, map out those relationships. So again, that's where Doctivity is really helpful to the organizations we're working with because we make it easy. We do all of that for you in a lot of our visuals and dashboards. So, one of my favorite examples of the work from the liaisons is with this particular use case. So, one of the health systems we've been working with, they were experiencing year over year financial losses. They knew they had a problem, they knew they were leaking, but they couldn't pinpoint. They didn't have the right data set to really understand the outmigration, what services, what providers, what practices. And again, that's where the Doctivity data really came into play. So the liaison team used what we call referral integrity dashboards to pinpoint that physician referral behavior specifically among the employed primary care network. The liaisons were able to say, this is the number of patients leaking within these particular services. And again, that customer put a dollar figure on it. They put the dollar figure on of 150 million in out migration coming from this employed primary care network. It actually took it above and beyond the liaison team and they created this system initiative to combat that outmigration through documented site visits with the liaisons involved. Administration got involved, went on the road, had conversations, and there's still some ongoing measurement of those results on a quarterly basis. But we have seen, the tide turn a bit. And I think this is another great example of, the liaisons are bringing it to the table. It's not necessarily on them to impact the strategy and the change and be out there doing it all by themselves. That when we see this type of number and this type of ROI, it really is a team effort throughout the organization.
And it's just a good reminder too that you can't do anything unless you have the right tools, right? Doctivity is a great system for giving people the ability to see what's actually happening in the market, to identify where the leakage is at, where the outmigration is at, and then once you know what the problem is, you can actually create effective tactics. Be it an access issue, be it whatever the actual issue happens to be. You can't really plan until you really know, and you have to have the information and the tools to know.
Yeah. I'm laughing a little bit, Dan, because our CEO always, says you got to create your plan and then work the plan. And I think that applies so well to the liaison teams is, you can't have a solid plan if you don't have the right tools, data, resources to help outline what that plan is. So, having Doctivity, having the data, doing that pre-planning, being able to show the execution of the plan through the PRM, and then using the data to really measure the results is so important to the success.
I gotta admit, the tools today are a bit of a cheat sheet. It really makes you look like a bit of a superhero behind the scenes, just knowing most healthcare systems have their own internal data, but this really allows you to see what's happening with the customers or the patients rather, that you're not getting, which is just unbelievable technology today that our Doctivity has and other similar tools have.
Yeah, not to go off topic too much, but that's really how Doctivity started. Is we're all healthcare experts, as Dan mentioned at the beginning, and we've built a tool that we all wish we had when we were inside of healthcare organizations
100%.
doing the liaison roles, doing business strategy planning, working in service line operations. And so we're really, Doctivity as a platform is really meant to solve all of those strategic focus areas.
Yeah, we're believers 100% in these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the last ROI use case that we have just to review today is really around how liaisons can impact service line growth. In this particular organization, again, they have several hospitals, is the provider liaisons identified system leakage of rheumatology using the claims data, but also through their documented PRM activity. So prior to using Doctivity, they heard this throughout their market that rheumatology patients were leaving the market because access was so bad that it's not that patients wanted to leave, that referring physicians didn't want to send those patients to an organization that was an hour away, but just access in that core market, patients couldn't get in, so they had to leave. And this liaison team, within a quarterly period, so over 3 months, I believe had over like 60 documented PRM activity note entries around rheumatology feedback, around access, how providers were saying patients were leaving the market. And the liaison team was able to very quickly pull out that report from Doctivity. I mean, just within 60 seconds, you can have all of that information at your fingertips. And they were able to then send it up to their leadership. The service line took it, and it really made them think and consider to say, okay, this may not necessarily be claims data intelligence, but this is saying this is the perception of the referring providers in the market, and this is what's happening, that qualitative piece. And then pulling in the activity data that we have in the tool to really say there's a large opportunity here for rheumatology. So, long story short, the system was able to recruit and hire two new rheumatologists. That was really pushed forward through the feedback of the liaison team and their work. And of course, the liaison team then got involved with the new physicians, scheduling visits, on site, all that was documented through the PRM. Those rheumatologists ramped up very quickly. And then, a couple months later, we measured that revenue impact of over $2 million. So again, Dan, you've said this over and over, is that you can be creative in the ways you're thinking about ROI. And just even the fact that you provide some justification to hire and recruit new providers is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've even had customers they didn't have a particular service in the market, but they were able to use our tool to see, well, what is the existing market look like? Could it support, this service? Is there enough volume there? And that's a very common use case we see as well.
So some final thoughts and takeaways. Dan, I have some thoughts, but I don't know if you want to maybe wrap it up here.
I'm happy to. I think you guys can tell that I'm kind of passionate about the idea that the liaison role is a revenue driver. We are not a cost center. Sometimes organizations, when it's belt tightening season, they look at certain roles as, oh, we can cut this. That is not you guys, not in my opinion. And I think the evolution of the role, I think anyone who's a smart leader or a smart strategist within a healthcare system realizes the value and the impact you guys can make. When there is a known issue, or I should say an unknown issue, but they know the revenue is slacking somewhere and they want someone to find out why and to help us develop tactics to fix it, it's going to be you guys who are the people who are the boots in the grounds, the people in the front line figuring it out and coming up with the information, the intel, so that the strategy folks can develop those tactics. And if you've been doing this long enough, you probably come to the table with tactics and suggestions for how to fix it yourself. Again, the more valuable you can make yourself to an organization, the more you can validate and quantify what you do for the organization, the more likely you are to have a tremendous career and great success within your organization, and you don't even have to worry about cuts. That won't apply to you. We mentioned the dashboards and data and having the right tools. So great, Dan. Great, Haley. We don't have these tools though. So what are we supposed to do? Well, I mean, you can give us a call. That's what I would suggest. If not us, you need to get tools. Obviously, we're biased towards activity, but I think there's a lot of great tools out there. I think ours are the best. But if you don't have the right tools to help you do the job, you're going to struggle. Manually putting in an Excel sheet in 2025 is not a sustainable strategy, in my opinion. People with those tools, particularly AI, my last bullet here, are going to work circles around you. These new AI tools are nothing to be afraid of. As a matter of fact, they make things easier. They erase barriers such as complex user interfaces, such as needing to type excessively amounts of stuff and information. You'll be able to just have conversations with the AI going forward. You'll be able to enter data, enter your notes, enter your activities as easy as I'm having a conversation with Haley here today. Same thing with finding data with analytics. This stuff is just going to get better and faster and more efficient, but it still needs the human driver behind it. It still needs the brain to tell you all this data, all this information, what to do with it, how to organize it, and how to succeed within your healthcare system or your specialty practice or ASC or wherever you happen to be a liaison for. This tool fits in a lot of different locations. Haley, did you have any other final thoughts you wanted to add?
Just I'm going to expand a little bit on the AI piece. I think you may have mentioned at the beginning, but I think we've talked about such great stuff that I actually forget. But with Doctivity's AI, because it is conversational, as a liaison, you can actually document your activity only using voice. So you don't have to touch your mouse, your keyboard. Although Doctivity is optimized for mobile, you don't even have to touch your phone screen. You could technically, be driving down the road, sitting in your car, heading into a practice, or just coming out of a practice, and document that whole interaction just by talking into it, and the conversational AI will walk you through it. So, we mentioned being able to do more with less, and all of the great points that Dan made. It's just something for liaisons and liaison teams to consider as they move forward with the great work they're doing.
Such a great point. I don't know about you, Haley, but when we used to take doctors out, we'd usually try to stack them all in one day, right? Stack as
Yeah,
many. And
yeah.
then you're thinking to yourself, oh, I got all this data entry to do either that evening or the next morning or whatever. And with Doctivity and with these new AI conversational tools, in between trips, even in between your meetings, you're knocking that work out. Again, doing more with less. I wish we had this stuff back then.
I know for sure. It would have been a game changer. And I did just transition the slide because we do have a QR code here on the screen. We want you to be able to walk away, like we said earlier, with some quick wins and maybe some consideration for some longer term tactics. But if you scan that QR code, you're going to get a free provider liaison market assessment template. It's something we provide to our customers, that we work with through their liaison work, but it's a great way and a great starting point to evaluate your market. So we just wanted to provide that as a leave behind. And as Dan mentioned, if you want a demo, you want to learn a little bit more, please feel free to reach out. I believe we're throwing that demo request here in the chat link, but we would love to talk with you some more.
Absolutely. We're friendly and we'd be happy to talk to you about anything you have questions about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we hope everyone has a great day. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to hear from you soon.